Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Danjana. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Danjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Ho Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sri Radha Madhava ki, Sri Radha Giridhari ki jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Tori Brajika Jashodhara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Bhai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Bhubari ki jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Tori Brajika Jashodhara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Bhubari ki jai. Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hare Krishna Vastaya Vadale Shmati Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesh Shanyavadi Bhaskya. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 26, the Hellish Planets, texts 19, 20, and who gives class tomorrow? Yeah, I'll save 21 for him. Similar verse, but you get it from a brahmachari perspective instead of attached householder. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so should we do the words, then you want to chant the prose?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You ready?
You can do all this.
Yes, Tvihavaistain. Yes, Tvihavaistain Balad Vahiranniratnadinim Brahmanasya Vaparahat Yanyasya Vanapadi Purushastham Amuttarajan Yamapurusha Ayasmayar Agnipindai Sandangshais Twati Nishkushkanti. Sounds painful just reading it.
Well, this is the Hellish Planets chapter.
I know. Just read the translation.
Okay. My dear king, what king is this?
This is Brigham.
Okay, it's gone all the way back to the... My dear king, a person who, in the absence of an emergency, robs a Brahmin. So does that mean in an emergency you can rob a Brahmin? In an emergency. Okay. Or indeed anyone else of his gems and gold is put into a hell known as Sandamsha. There his skin is torn and separated by red-hot iron balls and tongs. In this way his entire body is cut to pieces. Right, this is all in the subtle body. So, Hare Krishna. Text 20. Let me just read the translation. Okay, translation. A man or woman who indulges in sexual intercourse with an unworthy member of the opposite sex is punished after death by the assistance of Yamaraj in the hell known as Taptashurmi. There, such men and women are beaten with whips. The man is forced to embrace a red-hot iron form of a woman, and the woman is forced to embrace a similar form of a man. Such is the punishment for illicit sex. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Generally, a man should not have sexual relations with any woman other than his wife. According to Vedic principles, the wife of another man is considered one's mother, and sexual relations are strictly forbidden with one's mother, sister, and daughter. If one indulges in illicit sexual relations with another man's wife, that activity is considered identical with having sex with one's mother. This act is most sinful. The same principle holds for a woman also. If she enjoys sex with a man other than her husband, the act is tantamount to having sexual relations with her father or son. Illicit sex life is always forbidden, and any man or woman who indulges in it is punished in the manner described in this verse. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unminitam Ninata Ismai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakti Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavani Bhyo Vaishnavi Bhyo Namo Namaha. So, by your blessings and kind thoughts, I'll try to say a few words on this. Translation again. A man or woman who indulges in sexual intercourse with an unworthy member of the opposite sex is punished after death by the assistance of Yamaraj in the hell known as Taptasurmi. There such men and women are beaten with whips. The man is forced to embrace a red-hot iron form of a woman, and the woman is forced to embrace a similar form of a man. Such is the punishment for illicit sex. It kind of gives new meaning to that expression, you're hot, right? People say, right? It's probably something left over in the mind from hell. Like that. So anyways, anytime you hear someone say that, remember this verse, Prabhu's. She's really hot, and he's hot. Really hot. So, Hare Krishna. So it is very often you hear people criticize vehemently religion, that you're ruining all of our fun, right? There's a God up there who's just waiting for us to have a good time, and then he squashes the whole thing. And the book is filled with all kinds of stuff. You can't do this, you can't do that, and all the good stuff. So just like diets, all the good stuff is unhealthy for you, right? And you got to go on this diet where you just drink cabbage juice and brown rice and stuff like that. And all the good stuff will kill you. What kind of God is that? That he created a world where all the fun stuff is bad for you. That's what they say. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I'm out of this club. I don't accept that, right? So there's different ways to look at what's going on here. This seems, it is. It doesn't seem, it is. You can imagine. You don't imagine. We've actually been there and done that. Can you imagine? It's way a long time ago, but or maybe not so long ago. But we've done this. We've been through this hell, maybe a few times. Because in the third canto, it's not one of the verses I asked you to look up, but at the end of that description of the movements of the living entities and so on, it says the living entity, that was the first exposure we had to the Yamadutas. Remember the picture of the old man in the bed, and everyone's gathered around, and the Yamadutas right behind him pulling him out. And he grows up, and he's just dying pitifully. He can't talk, and all the family, the sons and daughters, like, how much money has he left for me? And the Yamadutas are pulling him out. He goes to hell. It describes the journey to hell. The dogs are nipping at him and barking. It's burning, fire, and suffering, and the ropes are around his neck. 3, right? There's 3 Yamadutas, and they each got a rope around his neck, pulling him out of his subtle body, dragging him to hell. And he goes through all kinds of suffering, which is described there. In fact, we had one of those, that picture of the person on like the rack, tied to the rack, and the fire's underneath him, and the dogs are chewing on it. We used to have that picture back there in the pujari room for devotees. So don't take any prasadam off the plate before it's transferred, or this will happen to you. Chaitanya Bhagavatam put that back there, head pujari at one time, because it was getting out of hand. So, but it says he goes through all of this, and takes birth again, and he doesn't learn his lesson. So how powerful is Maya? Maya is very, very powerful. So the way to understand this, because you look at it 2 different visions. One vision is, as a materialist, the greatest happiness in the material world is this sex, the sex attraction, and everything that comes with it. Friendship, society, love, profit, distinction, adoration, and just the whole package, because it's the greatest source of enjoyment, illusory enjoyment for the conditioned soul. It's like like a sundae, and you got the cherry on top of the whipped cream. It's the prize. It's the material world. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that the materialists object. You're taking away not only the greatest happiness, but really the only happiness we have. So what's going on here? God is that person who's an order supplier, right? He's supposed to be supplying all of our enjoyment, and then here it is, he's taking it all away. He said, we can't do this, we can't do that, and if you do it, you'll be punished in a horrible way, excruciating, horrible way. Of course, we understand that this is all going on in the subtle platform. The soul isn't hurt, and there's no physical body, but still there's an impression. What is that called? When there's an impression? There's some scars, but there's some word for that. In other words, we don't remember all of the things that happen to us, but there's an impression. And that's what's important, the impression that we carry with us. That's what's important. Just like, why don't we remember all the previous lives? No, but there's an impression there. It makes an impression. So, no, it's karma. Your karma, some scar or something like that. You remember all these things. But from the spiritual side, why is it so intense? The punishment. Why is it so intense? Why these different verses? I'll have you read in a moment or two. along the same lines, the warnings and the punishments, and because this is what keeps us in the material world. Maitunya agara, Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, shackles of sex life. We're stuck in this material world, and that's the big one. So you want to get out, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it. That's the big one, because we have our material desires, and that's the big one that keeps us here. So you got to deal with it. Just like you go to the doctors and they say, "I'm very, very sorry, you have a serious disease, and you have to deal with it. If you don't, what's going to happen? You know, you're going to be suffering a lot and die early or whatever." So you got to deal with it, even though it's you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with it. You know, and sometimes people don't. You got these people, the doctor says, "You got to stop smoking." They say, "I can't." They just keep smoking. And what happens? They die. You hear these stories all the time. You have to give this up, you have to give that up, and they just can't do it. It's their only happiness in life. Don't eat this, don't eat that. And they do. And just, so what's that? That's called delusion, right? Self-delusion. It's described in the Bhagavatam. What are we thinking? But the senses are so strong, the attachment is so great, that we just can't stop. Just like a person may be addicted to some kind of intoxicant. Like that. Just like my younger daughter told, she's a nurse, and she was talking about, my aunt asked her, how many babies do they deliver every day? You know, it's like 300 a month or something, just that one hospital. And then she's brought up that what do they do with drug addicts? They have to deal with the drug addict women who come in. And the babies are addicted to heroin when they're born. So they have to actually bring them to a place and give them morphine so they have withdrawal, because the babies have a horrible withdrawal. But because the mother was taking all these drugs, meth and heroin, the baby has it. It's like it's in the system. And you'd think the mother would give it up, stop it. She has a baby in her womb, but they don't. So it's like it's touch and go whether the child will live or not. What damage has been done, but the mother won't give it up. Can't give it up. You just can't give it up. It's too strong. The senses are so strong, the minds. So it's no surprise that it's a big struggle. What does Prabhupada say? There's two things that make it very, very difficult for someone to give up on the spiritual path. And they've been the downfall of many, many spiritual aspirants. One begins with an M, one begins with a W. No. You got one right, 50%. Money and women, like that person. That's you're actually correct in the sense that for women it's men, and for men it's for women. But Prabhupada says men and women, and those two things, because they're the tickets to happiness in this material world and the bodily concept of life. But how about if you want to get out of the bodily concept of life? And then it's a shocker. You know, just like you imagine. And it may happen to all of us. You go to the doctors and he tells you, that day he tells you, you've got some terminal illness. And you got to deal with it. You may or may not be able to pull through. If you don't stop doing this, if you don't lose weight, and you're faced with the reality of making some huge changes because for so many years and decades, you've been living a lifestyle that's suicidal. So, unless one can make that shift in their consciousness and see life through the eyes of the spirit soul and its eternal relationship with Krishna, we're always forced to feel resentful about things like this. Why is he ruining my fun? Right? But who am I? Right? I'm not this body. So he's not ruining my fun at all. He's just trying to help me. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita says, Pram dishtva navartate. What does that mean? Pram dishtva navartate. By higher taste, one is fixed in consciousness. So there is something better. Krishna not saying, I just want you to suffer your whole life. Is it okay to tell a joke? You might have heard this joke before. Mahabharata told me this joke. So if you don't like it, talk to him. He's in the kitchen. The Vatican, this is true. Down below, it goes down many, many different levels. There's a basement there. And they keep all kinds of old texts, Christian texts going back, practically, barely even, falling apart. It's so old. So many rows and rows of all kinds of writings and things like that, and Christianity and so on. So anyways, this is one old priest, he's down there, and all of a sudden he becomes ecstatic. He found something, and he comes up the stairs, and he's like, "Man, I can't believe this. I can't. You wouldn't know. What did I find?" And they said, "What'd you find, Father?" He said, "It's right here in this old book here. It's not." He said, "It's not celibacy. It's celebrate." Right? They had it wrong. They had it wrong. It's not celibacy. It's celebrate. For all these, hundreds and hundreds. In fact, actually, it's true though. Originally, in the Christian church, the priests took a vow of celibacy. They got married and so many things like that. Then there's one pope there. He just said he didn't like women or something like that. So in other words, it was voluntary until he said no, it's not voluntary. So that's the mentality and the materialistic consciousness in the bodily. To the extent we're in the bodily concept of life, actually, to the extent we want to enjoy in this material world, we don't like this kind of stuff. We don't like to hear it. We don't like anything to do with it like that. It's just too much to handle. And without that higher taste, it actually is impossible to get over it. It's impossible. And actually, it is impossible. What is that? Daivyeshu gunamai mama maya duratya mameve papajante mamaitam tarantite. So duratya means you can't get past it. This desire to enjoy in the material world, this desire here for sex, is so strong. Because another thing is that the material side of this, illicit sex disturbs society so much. People's minds are disturbed. I mean, they just talk about the fire. They fan it. They fan it. I remember one devotee was saying she was on Sankirtan many years ago in Europe, and they're doing office to office, like with roses or something like that. And she came to one office, and two secretaries are talking about how they're having relations with men who worked in the office or already married, purposely, just to disturb. They're having a good. It didn't matter they were married, just to disturb. Can you imagine that? The wife finds out. It creates such a disturbance in society for everyone. And then you got the children, it's crazy. It's insane. It's such a... Yeah. So it just, where's the, like a snowball in hell's chance. I'm talking about hell here, so let's get some, over the next few days, let's get some puns and jokes from hell, right? So, snowball in hell's chance of getting over all of this in today's society, because they're pushing you the opposite direction, and with a insane idea that the more you push it, the more you'll be happy. But actually, people become unhappy because it's not our nature. And one sinks into ignorance and passion, and those are two modes which create distress. Goodness is where you actually find some happiness. So society, Vedic society, or we call it Veda, wherever it is, if it's organized in such a way where that fever comes down, one is properly married and takes those vows seriously, like that, and then gradually becomes detached, the husband and wife, and vanaprast, and then, it's very, very peaceful as far as possible. It's definitely not, it's not a disturbance in your life, and it's not a disturbance in society. Like that. So, we've got some verses here. Would you like to read yours first? You need a microphone. You need to get the microphone. 3:25, 28. Yeah, these are just different famous verses in the Bhagavatam on this theme.
On hearing this statement of the Lord, Dravuti inquired, "What kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet?"
That's not it. This is 3:25-28.
3:25-28.
Okay, I got it wrong. What do you got? 3:26-20. 35. What do you got? You got a microphone? I got the wrong chapter.
ethereal existence which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place
I got it wrong.
on the
Sorry.
impulse of time.
It might be, is your 325, chapter 25?
Yeah.
It might be 26. What's the second?
Well, it's all these verses, the famous verses, about Kapila Dev, in adverse, about dancing dog in the hands of a woman, or falling down into hell again. There's two verses there. Let's jump. No, okay. I got the wrong chapter. Let me read the verse I got. This is from the 5th canto. We already went through this months ago. This is the famous verse from Lord Rishabdev. This pumsastriya maituni bhavametam tayor mito hridaya grantamahu atokriya kshetriya sutapta pitar janasya moho yamaham mameti. This verse talks about, it points out in one verse, material existence in a nutshell. The whole kit and caboodle, as they say. The attraction between male and female is a basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relative, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. So this is the as I said earlier, the word maituni agara. This is the shackle. As soon as that connection is there, material existence means, in the bodily concept of life, living in this material world, the basic principle is this attraction. What else is going to keep the soul here? I mean, we're eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. There's got to be some really heavy-duty, knock on the head or drug or something to make us completely forget who we are. To completely forget we're eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and think this is everything. Maya has to be very, very strong. There has to be something very, very strong. Sammoham, perfect illusion. And that's what this is. That's why it's so hard to get out of it. And it says here, it's the basic principle. And based on this principle, the hearts are tied together. And from there, one becomes very attached to one's own body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. And one always thinks in terms of I and mind. I am this body, and everything is in relation to our mind. And thinking in this way, one forgets what? The soul, Krishna, the reality is just over. You just forget. There's one about there's no greater attraction than what accrues between. Is that it? Yeah, okay.
331-34 Tesh Vashanti Subudeshu Kandati Tatmas Vasadushu Sangam Nakuryat Chocheshu Yoshit Kridamageshucha. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. And here's one this is actually repeated in the 11th canto by Krishna in his Uddhava Gita, except for one word he changes. Natatasya bhaven moho pandaschanya pasangataha yochit sangatita pumso yatatat sangasangataha. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. And in the 11th canto, in the Uddhava Gita, he changes one word. Instead of moha, he says klesha. Natatasya bhaven klesha. There's not as moha is the misery and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other, like that's anything. So if you repeat a verse.
So is it chapter 31? I had the chapters wrong.
I don't know. It's 331, 34, and 35 is what I read.
Yeah, I had the
dancing dog
way
one.
Off.
And that's,
way off. I was an illusion. Okay, but what verse? And then you have the 7th canto, right? This is Prahlad Maharaj.
Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands.
5-year-old boy speaking.
Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Grihamedis, so-called grihastas, who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. The kripanas, the fools, who are just the opposite of brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the suffering of fools and rascals. The sufferings of fools and rascals.
Okay. So, getting near the end here. the most biggest takeaway from these verses is that one should be very, very serious about getting the higher taste in Krishna consciousness, the chanting, kirtan, all the different devotional activities, because unless we get that, we'll never get over the hump. It just won't happen. This is something that we've been cultivating. You know, you cultivate something like you're cultivating kirtan. How long have you been cultivating kirtan? And how long have you been here? 2 years. So, wow, that's pretty good. But how about 2 million years you're cultivating kirtan? You're probably pretty good at it, right? It's like, come back in 2 million years. Boy, he's really good. Mogamila's been working on it for 2 million years. So you cultivate something for millions and millions of lifetimes. That's deep. And so this desire to enjoy in the material world and this bondage of opposite sex, it's been going on for millions and millions of lifetimes. So do you think in a few weeks or years or even a lifetime or two, it's going to actually go away? Unless Krishna is very, very kind, the spiritual master is very kind, it won't go away. So we have to always be anxious and endeavoring to get that higher taste, to get the mercy of the Guru and Krishna, the Vaishnavas, to get the higher taste in Krishna consciousness. Then all these things, what is in the song to the Goswamis? Tucham, insignificant. It becomes insignificant. It's there, but it's insignificant. We're not denying that these things they're not illusion, they're going on. But what are they? They're insignificant for a devotee who has a higher taste. That's why he's not attracted. Then, of course, there's the other side where one becomes, one's very attracted, but one is sometimes you see, people speak very heavily against these things, but in their heart they're very attracted. And that's what they're trying to compensate for their own attraction. Or, whatever. I remember we had one sannyasi visit here many, many years ago, back in the 80s, and he gave the Sunday feast lecture, and he just went on and on. He used to be a doctor or something. He went on and on about, the septum and this coming out of the body, that coming out of the body, and, just grossing out of the whole, and people were walking out. It's like, come on, it was over the top. It's too much. It's like you don't have to meditate on this kind of stuff. What we have to meditate on is the happiness in Krishna consciousness, happiness in the mode of goodness, right? So, like one sannyasi, he trained his brahmacharis to spit. Remember that? No. Yeah. Yeah, whenever there was saw a householder or a woman, they didn't last very long. I remember they came through Boston in the 70s. And he wouldn't come to the regular class. They had their own classes. He was at a traveling party. He was collecting for India. And because, maybe he wasn't allowed in class because he spit all over the temple room. I don't know what was, but I remember that they had their own upstairs in Prabhupada's quarters in Boston. They had their own classes. And some of the brahmacharis thought, this is really, really far out. They're really Krishna conscious, man. They just spit when they see a householder, but that's not Krishna consciousness at all, right? That's not Krishna consciousness. Where's that? So one has to be... anyways, we can end here because there may be some questions or comments on this whole subject.
Since you spent some time in Boston, you joined there, right?
Yeah.
I heard this a long time ago, and maybe you can confirm or deny it or not, that at a certain point, there were brahmacharis in Boston, and they were doing book distribution or whatever. But there was, they're having a hard time controlling their young guys and controlling. So they wrote to Prabhupada, and he recommended that in order to mitigate this agitation, we call it, they should read the rasa dance from the Krishna book before taking rest. Did you ever hear anything like that?
Not before my time.
Oh, okay. Maybe before your time. When did you join, 75 in there?
74.
74. Yeah, probably may have been earlier.
Because they had a big... Giriraj Maharaj may be able to confirm that. He was there.
You remember who you heard that from?
No, I don't.
I'm sure.
He would know.
He was there.
Yeah,
Biraj Maharaj was there. The
remember.
BBT was there for one time. Downstairs in the basement, that's where they used to have the printing presses and everything. The place was on Alston. It was a morgue.
Oh, really?
You get haunted every once in a while. Still, people floating around. Like that. Hare Krishna. But anything else? Kundadas. Sean.
I didn't. Oh, okay. I'm curious about this. In the purport, it's saying that anyone who engages in illicit sex will then, visit this hellish planet. But then it's not entirely clear to me what level of illicit sex, because it says
that's a good point.
But then there's of course, we generally say illicit sex meaning even outside of procreation for Krishna conscious kids, and here it doesn't mention that definition of illicit sex. So it would seem that anything outside of marriage. But then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that any person who has, there's that stricter, or there's that definition of illicit sex, and then there's here saying illicit sex meaning sex for the woman. He said sex with anyone other than her husband is like having sex with her father. And then for the man, he specific, the exact words were for a man to have sex with anyone else's wife. So that's different. I mean, maybe that's an accident. Maybe there he's actually talking about the exact same thing, but that's distinctly different. That. And so it seemed, of course, who cares how it seems to me, but it seemed to me a little, I could certainly see other people thinking it sounds a little unreasonable that for a woman to have sex with anyone she's not married to, it's as bad as having sex with her parents. And that, of course, but then for the man, the way it was presenting it in the purport is that, well, for a man to have sex with someone else's wife, not just any other woman he's not married to, but specifically someone else's wife, that's as bad as having sex with his mother. But then for the woman, the way it was worded was that for her to have sex with anyone who she's not married to. And then it seems, okay, well, if that's taken literally, like, it just generally we say, and it's presented that, it's not like for a Brahmin to drink alcohol is much worse than for a Shudra, and for someone to commit a sinful activity knowing is worse than not knowing. And so while illicit sex is bad, but there's different levels of illicit sex. So here it sort of sounded like whether you have sex with a prostitute or just someone you met or someone you're in the modern age dating or someone you're engaged to, that's all equally bad because you're not married. And so is that your takeaway from it, or am I?
Well, there's a few things, but one thing I didn't know if maybe had been brought up in some previous classes, but we have to understand that Krishna is in the heart, and he knows exactly what's going on. And these different hellish punishments, they're given to those who are very, 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 very sinful. So someone may have one situation and someone just may be addicted to it and creating all kinds of problems. They're not both going here. In other words, it's exactly in proportion to what that living entity deserves, okay? So we have to be very, very understanding of that. So this is what this is referring to, those who are very, very, very sinful in hurting out, really creating a disturbance, hurting themselves. And to that extent, this punishment is there, just like in a court of law. Stealing is stealing, but if there's petty theft, have you ever been arrested for petty theft? Just asking. I don't know if it was on the your you what? Okay, but you weren't arrested. Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was on your entrance form before you moved in. Have you been? Is it on there? Have you been convicted of any crime or something? There should be on there, right?
This was in the 60s.
60s.
But as a revolutionary act.
Okay.
I was liberating the thing that I was shoplifting.
Like Abby Hoffman's book. Remember that one? Steal This Book by Abby Hoffman? Okay. And there he goes, if you want free shoes, go to the Hare Krishna temple. And this book by Abby Hoffman about how to steal things. So, that's important to understand. And say, my goodness, I just, before I got married, I had one relationship. Now I got to go to hell, and no, probably not. So it's Krishna always gives us exactly what we deserve. So it's never out of proportion, because this is pretty heavy duty stuff. So someone who really, really just is, you can say addicted and sinful and doesn't care about anything and whatever, they're probably going to land up in a place like this. Or others, the lesson will come in some other way, like that. So, also it's funny, you ask these questions, are you trying to get some wiggle room in here, trying to figure out how to beat the system? Well, but I didn't do this, and she was, before I got married, we were engaged. And, it's like trying to figure out, the slide of the karmic sliding scale there or something like that, just in case. But overall principle is Krishna's in the heart, witnessing everything, and he's going to give us exactly what we need to learn a lesson. That's what karma is. So if someone's got a very heavy lesson to learn, these verses are describing. Is Dravida going to hell because it wasn't an emergency and he stole someone's property? No. So you're safe. Balaram said you're safe. Okay? There is a distinction there. There is distinctions and so on. And Krishna it's not fudging or anything like that. Krishna's in the heart. He knows all of our lifetimes, millions and millions. He knows how many times we've been through the hellish planets. And he's just working it all out without imperfect, intelligence and harmony. Exactly what we need to learn the lessons we need to learn. So that's actually a solace. Like that, it's not completely out of balance. He's not vindictive. He doesn't enjoy anything in the material world. He doesn't enjoy the living entities being here, suffering, being foolish. But it's called, what they call it, like tough love or something like that. The parents sometimes have to put their foot down, because you really have to learn this. It's just like walking out in the street. You ever see that or experience it? The parents grab the kid and yank him and yell at him. Why? Because you walk out on the street, you're going to get squashed by a car. It's not the same as like if the kid just, picks up an extra cookie or something. It's deadly. So you see the parents flipping out. They grab the kid and pull him back. Don't you ever do that again. Because it's serious stuff. So this is when it becomes very serious stuff. That jiva needs a real big slap. So they go to this place. Is that okay? Okay.
I think maybe this verse, which Prabhupada would quote, I forget the context, but I've heard him quote it, puts it in perspective for devotees who are struggling and they may have some problem. Swapada Moolam, who's speaking? This is Lord Chaitanya, who's giving this, quoting from the Bhagavatam, and it is verse number. This stupid thing. It doesn't say exactly. Swapada Moolam Badadak Priyasya Chaitanya Bhava Sahari Paresha Bikama Yat Chotpatitam Katanchid Dunoti Sarva Mridisannivishta. One who has given up everything and taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Hari, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to Krishna. If he is involved in some sinful activity by accident, the Supreme Lord, who is seated within everyone's heart, removes his sins without difficulty. So this is encouragement, is that, well, that's it, committed a sin, I might as well pack it in now, doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to hell. So, no, this.
I'll give you another example, I just remembered, about Krishna knows what we need and how our karma will come to us. It may not necessarily be a visit to hell. So one devotee was telling me in his chart, because he's always had problems with women. He's been married a few times and, blah, blah, blah. It's difficult. So the astrologer told him, in your last life, you were very nasty with women. Now, the astrologer didn't know what was going on in this life as far as his relationships, but now that's his karma. He's very nasty with women and not kind and so on. So he takes birth, and in this lifetime, the women give him a hard time. Straighten him out. So Krishna knows exactly, gives us exactly what we need, to work out our problems like that. So anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, there are 2 questions pending on the Zoom.
Okay, well, let's have them.
Okay, Maitra Prabhu first.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Dharmasetu Prabhu, for a nice class. These verses in the 5th canto move us to want to help people avoid these situations, but by going out and reading to them about the lake full of worms is not likely to attract anyone. You know, at the Rath Yatra, we see the Christians are there basically for the same reason. They want to save people, but there's never a line to join their program. But you mentioned a very nice point about the paramdrish for the higher taste. And I was hoping maybe you could put preaching into that context, higher taste versus just, because conditioned souls aren't going to be delivered just by understanding the philosophy. So.
1 second, Prabhu. What is your name?
My name is Maitreya Das.
Maitreya.
We didn't catch that.
Okay. Prasadam in the holy name. Prasadam in the holy name. That's where the taste comes from. On day 1 and day 1,000 and day 1,000,000, chanting of the holy names and taking prasadam, devotee association, these are where people are going to get their higher taste. And gradually, they will just give these, that's our hope and our experience, not a hope, because it's not just a hope, it's everyone's experience who's been practicing Krishna consciousness. You gradually just have the higher taste. And you look at these things and say, I probably give an example like kids. Little child has these toys, and we all experience it. And at a certain time, we just didn't want to play with them anymore. We just moved on to something else. At one time, they were the dearest thing to us, and we would punch someone out if they took our toy, right? Give me that back. Our brother or sister, right? We'd kill them for it. But now it's like it's just in a trunk somewhere, and parents give it away. Just have no attraction. You've outgrown it. So higher taste means we outgrow this attraction to the material world. Everyone wants happiness. Prabhupada said his only desire was to make everyone happy. What is that? Sarvakalam sukhi bhavantu. Yeah. Make the whole world happy. That's the Vedic aphorism. But the real happiness is Krishna consciousness. I mean, we have to be real about that. So preaching means giving people a chance to chant the holy name, take prasadam, and associate with devotees. And in that situation, they will experience a higher taste. And the second question?
Hare Krishna, Dharmasetu Prabhu,
Hare Krishna. Hare Prabhu.
May I?
Absolutely.
Yes, Prabhu, the quote from the purport to text 20 goes as follows. Quote, the same principle holds for a woman also. If she enjoys sex with a man other than her husband, the act is tantamount to having sexual relations with her father or son, end quote. So based on this quote, my question is, when an homosexual intercourse is happening, is it that the one man who is interacting sexually with the other man is doing the same as having sex with his father or son?
I can't answer that. You've stumped the teacher. It's all bad, though.
Well, the woman, if she's having sexual relations with other men other than her husband, is the same as to having sex with her father or son. What about in a homosexual relationship? Is it that it is a similar situation?
Well, maybe they marry today. You get married.
I don't know.
Oh, you do not know the answer?
No, I do not know the answer.
Oh my God!
I'm fired. I will not come back give class ever again. No, I just don't know.
I am trying to get
specific answer,
for
but
so
the point
many
is
years.
Okay, but the point is the overall answer is there in the purport. Anything out of what's being described here as a sattvic arrangement, there's going to be problems. There's going to be problems at every single level for the person, for society, for the family, and the world. and therefore Krishna rectifies that somehow or other. That we can be sure of.
Yes, because if a person comes to me, an homosexual comes to me and say, hey, why is it that the Hare Krishnas are condemning homosexual activity? And if I answer by saying, when you are having sex with a man, it is the same as having sex with your father or son. Do you think that such a behavior is good for both parts? And maybe because of this type of answer, the homosexual will stop having homosexual relationships. Because it is a very Vedic strong argument.
No, that's exactly what Maitreya Prabhu was just saying. The answer to that is, we try to see everyone as spirit soul, engage everyone in Krishna consciousness, no matter what their sexual inclination is. That's the proper way to preach, instead of trying to tell everyone they're going to burn in hell. So
I shouldn't be there saying that they're having sex with their father or son?
No, you should say, did you hear one of these sweet balls? They're fantastic. Did you try one of these samosas?
Yes,
hey, here's the Bhagavad
now I
Gita.
understood your mood.
Bring
Of course,
everyone up
Prabhu.
to the point of spirit soul, and then they'll transcend us eventually. But that's what the preaching is.
Yes,
Like
of
that.
course. Now you gave me the very satisfactory answer, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, you're just amazing.
And make sure there's coconut chutney with those pakoras that you give them.
Yes,
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Always positive. Devotees are always positive. Okay, have to be positive.
Yes, always positive. Of
Because
course, Prabhu. I
it doesn't
will
do
follow
any
your
good.
instruction to the letter.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome.
We can end here. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.